So, I'm going to kick off with really your experience for the last 24 months in terms of how the market's changing, not in terms of your experience of Zoom calls. We'll spare people that. But yeah, how do you think the market's changed these last 24 months from a net zero perspective?
Yeah, massive change. And I wouldn't exclude COVID from it. I think COVID actually has had an effect on how people are perceiving what's important. So, not the pandemic necessarily itself, the dealing of it,
Yeah,
but I think that has been part of really hitting home about what matters and readjusting some priorities in business, in private lives, which then affects business. So I would say that we've seen a really, really big difference in the hunger. I mean, literally, I'm using that word quite intentionally, the hunger that is out there in the business world to do good. And that is both within their own products, within their own operation, just the way they are understanding the issues that are important for us right now.
yeah. And that's coming out in your conversations with clients?
100%. 24 months ago, we had clients that were like, yes, we want to do good. We want to do a little bit of good. How much can we afford? Today, we're in right at the get-go with a client saying we need to do sustainable. And then it's about discussions on the design or the budgets or whatever. The question, first of all, now is how are we going to do net zero? How are we going to do well-being? And the clients are saying to us, right, what should the strategy be that the designer should follow? And that is night and day where we've been maybe 3 or 4 years ago and definitely 10 years ago. So instead of us being an afterthought, something that's going to add it on to the design, we're actually saying, no, you've got to be part of the DNA of the design. And that is the
Brilliant.
right approach.
And in terms of the kind of client's sense of what good looks like and their understanding of the issues, are they coming to you knowing this is important but not knowing how to do it, or they're coming actually quite educated? What's the kind of range of kind of client understanding around net zero and low carbon?
Yeah, so that's a great question. In fact, I'd say we've got 3 different formats of that. One, you've got clients that don't know how to do it, know it's important, and they'll say, please help us. The other client will be, we know a little bit about this, but we don't know how to do it in our real estate. So they may have taken care of a broader agenda of their own business, but not their real estate and ops. And that is another sort of level deeper. And scope 3 emissions and embodied carbon and whole life cycles, all of that. And then we've got the other element that I think we should be very open about in saying that actually with clients moving the agenda so strongly and us now saying, great, let's make most of that, we're learning also at the same time because we've never been in this place before. So everybody's finding out, well, how do we push the next front line and what does that look like with what we've got to play today?
So now all eyes turn to the designer to help produce a low carbon workplace.
Yeah.
So I'm interested, and I'm always interested in hearing you talk about design, but particularly kind of the role of a designer in this agenda. How should they be embracing this pretty complex and pretty difficult task?
Very complex and very difficult. First of all, I'd like to highlight the Declare campaigns, both the architect and interior design Declare campaigns. So I think we shouldn't talk about all architects, all designers. There's a few there that have been championing for years, us included, but there's an increased number of designers and architects who are feeling empowered and are coming together to actually vocalize the change. I wouldn't for everybody out there who is making a difference, well done and keep going. But we do have many designers who still think that measuring carbon or thinking about environmental issues is going to be an add-on and it's going to be maybe the sustainability consultant's job. And they're just going to continue doing what they've been doing and what the industry has awarded them in doing. Let's not kid about it. Everybody's been nurtured to think in a particular way and awarded in doing design in a particular way. And now we're saying, hey, that's not good enough. You've got to change again. And there's been very little incentive, very little time and reward. Fees, keep pushing fees down. Designers don't have time to learn, and so you can't do that and then expect professions to evolve and grow and take initiative. You need to have space to take initiative. So I think designers, and I think the role of design is to remove problems. That is what design is. It's not the pretty fluffy thing at the end of the day. It's not this, very lovely, luscious green wall behind me. It's not the great textures that we have all around us. Those are the output of design, but they're not the design. The design is a solution. It's a way of thought, of simplifying things and making things more easy and more beautiful. So if part of that is removing problems, then one big problem right now is our environmental impact and our lack of actually supporting occupant well-being. So bringing those together is actually then delivering value. And those are the 3 pillars of sustainability. Design is about bringing all those 3 things together and making sure that we have the most efficient system of parts at any given project.
You described how design can be done well there.
Yes.
But how is it happening?
Okay.
What's the...
I mean, there'll be all sorts of avenues, but what I am coming up against, if I have to kind of pick out some key problem areas, I would say the designers are still saying, I don't want to get involved with that embodied carbon stuff. I just want to do the aesthetic stuff. And I think this is very much a let's have a conversation moment. And designers really need to pull up their socks and really need to upskill, because it is a new skill they have to add to an existing very diverse set of skills. But embodied carbon and the understanding of the environmental impacts really needs to be honed by them today. It needs everyone to upskill around a project team to understand what that good looks like, because you need to have the vocabulary, you need to have the understanding of what somebody's telling you is right, to be able to judge it as, yes, I want that because that's linking to my commitments.
A lot of the issue then, you're saying with the designers, is an understanding of the knowledge and it's a learning
terminology
piece as much of the...
Yeah.
So any particular resources you point people towards? Where's the best? A designer wants to care about this issue, wants to know more, but doesn't.
Absolutely.
Where would you point them first?
So there's a lot of work done by the UK Green Building Council and the World Green Building Council. LETI, with the embodied and operational emissions. The Eleanor MacArthur Foundation has got a huge amount of resource on their website. They've got tools that you can measure. Circularity Index, for example. It's a free downloadable little Excel spreadsheet. You've got many circular tools. I think the renewables is one that's come from Sheffield University that's out for whole building.
Yeah.
And that is used in the London plan, I believe. And then you've got quite a number of embodied carbon measurement tools that they're all based and around the RICS professional commitment on embodied carbon life cycles. Yeah. So we've got a lot of tools coming out, and some of them are free and accessible, and so a lot of people can learn very quickly. In the evening, put 2 or 3 hours on one of those, you start getting more familiar with it, and I really encourage that.
I sometimes struggle to see where the incentive structure is for them to do things well on this. If they design kind of for a more circular end of life of a space, mm-hmm. how that will look up front if they do that well or they do it poorly, mm-hmm. the client's not going to be able to tell. And they're not even necessarily going to be able to tell themselves to some extent.
Actually, they can tell. Today, they can tell. When we're doing whole life carbon, whole life, that's including the end of life. So this is kind of in a moment, the moment of reconciliation, whatever the way of saying is. Right now, the requirement for whole life carbon means you've got to know what's going to happen at the end, and you've got to know what's going to happen in operation. So actually, there's nowhere to hide. And this perhaps also scares some designers because they've got to think a little bit more. And this is where it comes back to clients. Clients actually have to support designers and the design time and fees that it takes to do the right thinking.
Just let's go down that avenue for a minute then. Let's give designers a little rest. How have you seen the kind of manufacturer end of the supply chain? How do you think they've responded these last couple of years to demand?
I think some of them don't know what's hit them.
Yeah.
Because they haven't done anything. They've done same old. They understand now that they've got to do something. And when we're telling them what they've got to do, they're like, I have to stop production basically to change all my factory to be supporting net zero or low carbon. So there are some really, really big changes there. And I mean, they are definitely life critical for many businesses. So we're going to see a few losses, I think. We're going to see companies that are not going to survive, suppliers and manufacturers. We're going to see some that are going to have to really eat in or invest forwards into decarbonization and changing of supply chain agreements. Introduction of new business systems. It's going to look like a very, very different playing field in about 3 years' time.
So as quickly as that,
Yeah.
3 years.
Well, we can't wait. Then right now, I have clients that are saying we've committed to net zero by 2030. They're procuring buildings right now to be delivered and operational next year or the year after, and they will be in circulation at 2030. So we need those low carbon materials right now or next year. From now till next year, by 2022, we need these actually to be orderable. So if they're not, the other alternative when that commitment has happened is that you're not going to get more material. You're going to have to change as a designer where you're going to get stuff from, how you're going to build. You're not going to go and just do same old because you can't anymore. It's we've come to the point of no go anymore. It's not like, I can do this and I can do a little bit of that and I'll get away with it. I'll tick a box. Time's up. Top down, not just bottom up, a little bit less bad. But this is the day of reckoning now. And I'm going to meetings of many of these industry groups, furniture, dry lining, joinery, timber, concrete, steel. And they're all kind of scrambling now to take action. And when we're telling them what they need to do, they're really, rabbit in the headlights, kind of really in shock. And when you put the intensity of the change, the timings of that intensity to them, they're panicking. They're like, how on earth am I going to do this? And we're going to have many winners and losers. It's people who did take action and were planning ahead and did take seriously the science-based targets, the sustainability agenda, will be the winners. And they're going to see huge growth in the market and sustain their business. Ones that didn't, I think we're going to see some losers.
So those manufacturers then, let's stick on manufacturers for the moment, they're panicking. They know that suddenly a lot of projects, a lot of clients require this.
Yeah.
Is their problem at the moment that they don't understand their own product, or is the problem that they do understand it and they don't know how to decarbonize it?
Both. And they may also say something like, well, I've got this product here that is sustainable, but no one's buying it. And that is part of, again, the fact that we have designers and clients who have been choosing products that are not sustainable. And manufacturers do need to have that market leverage to be able to compare products from a price perspective or a resource perspective and promotion. So I think it's everything. It's both the manufacturers actually understanding their product and designing products, stopping products to be sold that are not sustainable. Cut your losses, stop selling a product, even if it's your bestseller, and invest in the future, promote another one. We're going to see a lot of mergers going on and bigger companies buying up smaller companies. I'm already hearing quite a lot of that going on because bigger companies who don't have products in-house are looking to introduce some in there quickly. So there's going to be really fast-paced change in the market.
On the material piece, are you feeling smug about banging the drum for EPDs for the last 10 years?
Oh my God, yes. Absolutely.
Suddenly everyone wants an EPD and you've been banging this drum for some time. And
thank you.
Frankly,
thanks for saying that.
We've been in some trouble without the ones that because there's a fair few out there and most of them have come about, not a lot of them have come out because of Scar Rating insisting upon EPDs.
Can I also highlight the work by people like Jane Anderson in the industry, who the queen of EPDs and life cycle thinking. People like her have done quietly some really, really important work with no, recognition and very much against the flow. But without the work of people like that, we wouldn't have been anywhere today.
It'd be really hard, without that transparency of material. And obviously we need more materials to get EPDs, but surprisingly good number that already exist, certainly for some trades.
Absolutely. And this is where a lot of the environmental assessment methods, such as Scar Rating, BREEAM, LEED, have actually been important. And people haven't understood why we've been producing and criteria that are asking for this paperwork. And on site, somebody like a subcontractor doesn't see a change in front of them. And so they think that they're tick boxing, especially lots of project managers think that is just a tick box. Many times it is, if real DNA is not running through the design and the delivery. But a lot of the activities that we've been asking for have been to get us to the point today to have these EPDs to hand. And now we are able to mine them. So what we need to now do is really get into those documents and actually start benchmarking products based on the content of those documents.
Do you want to just explain what you mean by mining EPDs?
Thank you. Okay. So an EPD is like a recipe, a food recipe, let's say. I usually cook cake or food. Fantastic analogies. So an EPD has ingredients. It has the process of how you're going to create a material, or with the recipe analogy, how you're going to make a food, what equipment you're going to need, what temperature you're going to have to heat up the food, and for how long. So similarly, we know all that data for a product, whether it's a floor finish or wall finish or a chair. Within it, we have certain categories that will talk about, well, how much embodied carbon do we have? And that's been used in the production of this product and material, in the supply, the manufacture, in use, and end of life. So how much embodied carbon is going to be actually emitted in the getting rid of stage at the end? So if it goes to landfill or gets burnt or whatever is assumed is going to be the outcome of this product. So when we've got that data, what we're saying is, right, we go straight and we pinpoint designers to go to particular places in the EPDs where this data is there, and then have 3 different products and compare between these which one has got the lowest carbon.
And to what extent do you think that's happening?
Very little. I mean, I've seen projects right now that are doing it, so I think it's extremely encouraging. We're doing it, but how many big projects are doing it? Less rather than more. But is it on the increase? Absolutely. And I think the sort of increase is quite dramatic.
Yeah,
everybody's getting onto it.
Super. So one last question from me. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
What one thing would you change about the industry? If you could wave a magic wand, what one thing would you want to change?
Designing with the end in mind. So know what's going to happen at the end of the life cycle of your product or your project. And whether that's a client and it's your workplace, what's going to happen at the end of it when you leave this, whether that's in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years. That's going to be really, really important. If we don't know what's going to happen at the end, and we don't know what the effects are going to be right up to the end, then we're blind, and we're losing every other target basically, and we're falling short of embodied carbon, science-based targets, evidence-based design, the lot. So for me, designing with the end in mind captures everything else. So every designer and every client should ask this question. If a designer is giving you this proposal or something, it says, fantastic, so what's going to happen at the end of life? And really know what's going to happen. And I think that answer wraps up many of the other things that I wanted to mention, which will be know your whole life embodied carbon, know your procurement solutions, know how you've procured and assembled something and how it's going to be used. And most importantly, what's the value? We've got to talk about value. What value we're getting out from all of these buildings that we build. What's the purpose of them?
Wonderful. Right, thank you for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Let's go and get some lunch.
Let's go.
Thanks, Lena.